Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Sisters, Soul Food, and Diabetes. Today, we're going to be sharing our stories of how we were diagnosed with diabetes and where we are along that process in our journey. So make sure you stay tuned to our conversations.
I think this is a good opportunity for us to go around and say when we were diagnosed, what we were diagnosed with, and how we're doing, because not everyone who's watching us knows us.
4 years ago in 2016, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and then lived that way for 4 years, tried everything that I could possibly try to get my A1Cs in range. Got to a point where I got in range, but I had to be like very strict about what I ate. I was miserable, very unhappy, like struggling. And then kept kind of like maintaining that because I thought that's what I had to do. And my A1C then went from 6.5 to 10% with no changes in medication, diet, or exercise. And actually I started exercising more. So that was also like an indication that something was wrong. And then a couple months ago in August, I found out that I have LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, which is a slow progressing form of type 1 diabetes. So my diagnosis was completely wrong for all of that time. I feel like it's like October now. So like two and a half months that I've known that I have had LADA, I feel so much better. I feel like the things that I'm doing are actually working. I feel like I'm getting access to medical professionals who understand and who are a lot easier on me. I feel like when I went to the doctor's office with type 2 in my chart, like it was always like, you suck, you're not doing the right. And so now the conversations are a lot different and a lot more helpful. And I was just joking the other day that I'm kind of getting like reprogrammed when it comes to food, because I used to think to achieve good blood sugars, you have to restrict if you want to get to like the perfect point or to a blood sugar that is meaningful to you and that keeps you in range and keeps you healthy. And now I'm learning like the exact opposite, that like you can still enjoy what you want to enjoy. Insulin is not bad for you. It's something that is helpful to you and something that is like a tool at your disposal to use, although it's unaffordable and at times like hard to access. But long story short, basically like having that change in diagnosis, I feel like has been a good shift in my mindset and has made me just feel like a sigh of relief. And I know that doesn't happen for everybody kind of with that change, but it also has just made me see that like diabetes care is sometimes not equitable, and depending on your type, you definitely have some access to things that other people don't have access to. And you're talked to in different ways as well. And so that has kind of like fueled a fire in my soul to show people that like it needs to be equitable. And like, just because you have a different type doesn't mean that you should be treated any differently. Your actual treatment may vary because of the type that you have, but the compassion and the guidance should not vary.
I was diagnosed when I was 45, 3 years ago, with type 2 diabetes. And I found out, I was in training in another state, and I was constantly thirsty. And I noticed that I was losing hair at my temples, and I lost like 50 pounds in 2 months or something. But I mean, so I knew something was wrong. So I go to the doctor and she says, you have type 2 diabetes, gives me a pamphlet, says I'm going to call in a prescription, and says, have a good day. And I was like, well, what does this mean? No, the first thing she said was lose some weight. Gave me a pamphlet, sent me out the door. That's all she said. So I switched doctors. We finally started like looking up resources. I found people online. I think Felissa was one of the people I found online first. And I was like, oh, okay, this is helpful, because it was about, taking care of yourself and like trying what works for you and like thinking about your diet, thinking about making healthy changes. And it was information. Got none of that at the first doctor's office. And then I got a nutritionist, and I do have people, I didn't have anybody to really talk to. So I said, fine, I'm just going to start talking to people myself on my Instagram. See if anyone wants to talk back to me, which I met all of you great ladies, which has also been helpful. But I think I'm older than all of you. So I'm almost 50. And I noticed that a lot of the issues that I encounter with diabetes are kind of slamming into perimenopause. So, so I started talking about that more because no one is talking about menopause and diabetes. And so I don't know if sometimes I didn't know if I was having a hot flash or if my diabetes was messing with me, making me sweat. So I wish there was more conversation around change of life and diabetes. That would be great. So I started talking about that, which has been really helpful for my mental health, because I have to say, I was in kind of a black hole about it. I was very sad. I was upset. I felt alone. And so that's mostly why I got on social media and I was like, forget it. I'm just going to ask people, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have a problem? Let's talk together. So now, I mean, I'm doing much better. Mentally, I feel great because I have more people to talk to. And I just wish that more people felt more comfortable talking about, like change of life. That's a really big issue because everybody in my family was like, oh my God, you don't talk about it. I'm like, yeah, but it's happening and I don't know what to do. No one will tell me anything.
Appreciate you talking about the change, because I've often wondered, what in the world is it like to have a hot flash and a hypo at the same time? That sounds like just some kind of special hell that I don't want to experience, but I'm probably going to one day.
It's like, older women don't want to talk about it and just tell me, is this happening to you? Does that happen? No one will tell me anything. So I'm going to talk about it and see if anyone will say anything with me. That's been my entire thing.
To link up with Diabetes Sisters. They talk a lot about like menopause and but they're more of like an enclosed community. So they have like pause groups that used to meet like in person, but pandemic reasons. But they also do virtual meetups, and you have a bunch of women in there who are older and have gone through menopause or diabetes. Another great group is Sugar Mama Strong with Mary Van Dorn, and her community is just for women. And I'm in that Facebook group, and we talk about a bunch of other stuff, including like perimenopause and menopause.
But I'm doing well now, but I still see a lot where people don't really want to talk about type 2 diabetes because they feel like it's something you did to yourself.
Right.
It's something you need to dig yourself out of, or you need to be ashamed, which is, someone literally said that to me in my DMs, that, well, you should be ashamed of yourself for being overweight because if you lose weight, you can cure it.
Like, I hate that so much because Instagram is not everybody's 24/7. You're showing like the craziest and like most insane things that are going to get attention, right? So like, if you're not posting a salad that day, it doesn't mean you didn't eat a salad for every other meal. It doesn't mean
Thank you.
Like, and that bugs me so much, is because people will judge you for that. They'll look at your grid and say like, oh, well, of course you deserve to have diabetes because like, look at the food you eat. And it's like, sir, you're seeing like one thing out of my entire 7 days this week. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
But what gets me is those people eat those things. See, I never fell for you got type 2 diabetes, which I'll get to my diagnosis story after Tiara tells hers. But like, you have it because of what you ate, when I know I ate the same thing everybody else ate. Cinnabon is not a national franchise for no reason. Mm-hmm. Fast food restaurants are not national franchises for no. We all Americans are eating practically the same thing.
I was diagnosed in 2017, 25, with type 2 diabetes. And so I had prediabetes when I was 18. So I was already familiar with the disease. And when I had prediabetes, it was a result of like just me gaining a bunch of weight after my freshman year of college. But I've always had issues with my weight since I was little. And that experience really scared me because I'd seen what diabetes had done to other people. So when I got diabetes about 7 years later, I was surprised because I'd made all these changes to my life and had been on like this like really cool like health journey for several years at that point. And I thought that was like all of the right things to do to not get diabetes, but I ended up getting it anyway. And it was actually my mom who was like, I think you may have diabetes because I went from drinking like a gallon of water a day to like 2 gallons a day, and I was peeing all the time. And when I was diagnosed, my blood sugar I think was like 556, and my A1C was like in like 15s. So my doctor at the time, he was like, "You're really lucky you came to see me now, because otherwise you probably would have ended up in the hospital." Which is weird because reading from other people's stories, they've gone into the hospital for A1Cs lower than that.
Mhm.
But he started me off insulin, and one of the questions I asked him was like, "Can I get off of insulin?" And he said, "It depends. Some people never get off of it." But like the way he said it as if like, some people do, but the others, you may just be on insulin forever. It didn't feel encouraging to me. There was no like, yeah, if you're on insulin, okay. It was more like, it felt like if I wasn't going to get off insulin, I would be a failure. And my A1C checkup after that, my A1C had gone from like 15 to think like 8. And he said, "Hey, I think we'll be able to get you off insulin." And I remember feeling so happy at that point. Little did I know that I would be misdiagnosed just a couple years after that with LADA. So, which explains so much because he and another doctor of mine increased my metformin and they increased my insulin dosages, but it wasn't working. And I was sitting at work in a meeting, and my blood sugar went up to like 450 or something, and that's the highest it's been since I was diagnosed. And I just remember feeling like crap. And all my colleagues and my boss, they were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I think I want to go home," but they couldn't send me home because I wasn't in the right state of mind to drive. My blood sugar was too high. So my colleague at the time got me some ketone strips, and I found like trace ketones, which should have been an indicator that I probably had type 1 diabetes. But I was just like, okay, that's cool. I'm seeing an endocrinologist for the first time 2 years after my diagnosis. And that endocrinologist guessed via email that I had type 1 diabetes, because I told her everything, like my symptoms. I told her like my hair was falling out like up to my diagnosis. Like I was like getting clumps of hair, especially when I went swimming. It was awful. And like when I look back at those pictures, I was small, but my face was so gaunt. I didn't look healthy. But like at the time, like I was training to become a figure competitor in a fitness competition. So I thought maybe I was losing that weight, and I was losing up to like 5 pounds a week. And I thought that was just because I'm in the gym all the time. I'm following this diet to the T. I'm really trying to get on that stage, but it was diabetes the entire time. And, I think when I was diagnosed, I felt kind of numb to it, I would say, probably looking back on it. I was like, okay, well, I've had pre-diabetes, so I know what to do. I was in grad school at the time to study nutrition education. So I knew all of the diet aspect was fine. I knew about carb counting and all that. But I think I didn't have that emotional support. Like I didn't have anyone to turn to, and I damn sure didn't know anybody who was 25 with diabetes.
Yeah.
So, and I had been on Instagram with my Cooking to a Tea account for a while now at that point, but I still didn't know anyone my age with diabetes, just a bunch of like food bloggers. So, and I didn't meet anybody my age until about a year and a half later, who was also at the Diabetic Awards. I don't know if y'all know her. Her name was Michelle, but she turned out she was also misdiagnosed with LADA.
Wow.
And it was really lonely for a long time. And I think, at that point, I felt like I had like this other mission in my life. So I was still in grad school when I was diagnosed. So I turned all of my academic assignments into type 2 diabetes. Type 2 in kids, type 2 was in adults and seniors, whatever major projects we had, it was about type 2 diabetes, because I wanted to know more about the disease, and I wanted to know more about the emotional side of it. And I wanted to know, like, how can you empower people with diabetes to make small changes every day to just improve their lives? And then after I was misdiagnosed, I felt like I went through like another just crisis where I was like, well, I moved across the country tell people with diabetes, because I have type 2 diabetes, but I don't have type 2 diabetes, where's my place? Because there are a bunch of people in the type 1 space who are doing good work, but that representation wasn't there in type 2. So I felt useless to a point where I was like, why am I even here? I might as well just like go home, because how can I advocate for people with type 2 when I don't even have the disease, and I've never had it. I've just lived it. And were those experiences still valid? So that was a bit of a trip. And I've moved past it now, because now it's like, well, I was treated as a type 2. I lived as a type 2. I've been stigmatized as a person with type 2 diabetes. So I have, this double knowledge now. I know that as soon as I was diagnosed with LADA, wow, it's like a whole new world of healthcare opened up. Suddenly, it's easier to get approved for a CGM because it's type 1 on my chart, not type 2. All of a sudden, I have this compassion about having diabetes that I didn't have before, because now I wasn't the skinniest person in the room. But guess what? It shouldn't have mattered, because even if I had type 2, the way my body looks does not mean that I deserve to have type 2.
I've been living with diabetes for 9 years now. I was diagnosed at the young tender age of 30. And when I was diagnosed, I felt like I was on top of the world. I remember January 2011 was the first time that I had looked in the mirror for a long time and said, I love me, everything about me. I finally finished graduate school. I was finally a professor of literature. I was not where I wanted to be in terms of my weight, but I was definitely well into my journey. By that time, I think I had already lost 45 pounds. So I had a routine. That was the main thing for me. It wasn't necessarily about losing weight. It was developing a routine of going to the gym and eating healthy. And so I was like, this is it. I am like here, like I have arrived. And then I got sick. And I was like, what in the world is going on? I went to the doctor. I was told that my electrolytes were off because I was working out all the time. I now know from looking at my medical records that when I saw the doctor the first time, my blood sugar was about 300. But she never tested my blood sugar. Just sent me away, told me to drink Gatorade. And then I had passed out in my bathtub. By the time I saw her again, I packed a bag. I literally remember packing a bag. I had my laptop. I had some clothes in there. I was living alone at the time. And I was like, I'm not coming back to my house until I know what's wrong with me. I knew I was dying, but I didn't know from what. And so I was like, I am not returning here until I get answers. So I went back to the doctor. Glucose didn't register. And called a coworker, because at this point my trust in the physician is like nil. She gives me insulin, but never tells me it's insulin. She's just like, I have to give you this injection. And I was like, ma'am, I don't know what's in that injection, but it's not curing me. There's something wrong with me. She made me sign a document that I was going to the emergency room against her wishes.
What?
Yes, she told me that I'm not a case for the emergency room. And then when I get there, she had this whole skit, honey. You would have thought I was on Saturday Night Live. She was like, when you get to the hospital, you have to tell them that you're in a lot of pain because you're not a case for the hospital. And then they're going to tell, let me tell you, when I walked in there looking like this in a wheelchair because I could no longer walk, them people rushed me back there quick. Whatever this skit was, she told me I had to say. I didn't have to say nothing because when they saw my blood sugar was 590 something.
What?
900. Yes. This was after the insulin she gave me.
After the insulin?
After the insulin. I stayed in the hospital 6 days. People assumed I knew about diabetes. I didn't. Everybody walked in the room. Well, you have to do. No, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know anybody with diabetes. I don't know anything about pricking fingers, checking blood sugar. I don't even know any of this. So my diabetes education was very poor. People assume certain things about me. Of course, I got diagnosed with type 2 and I don't have it. I have LADA, which I just found out last year. after experiencing the same thing you did, Tiara, with like feeling small. Last summer, there are like no pictures of me because I looked horrible. My booty was gone and everything too, but my face was sunken in. I just was like, I wasn't doing nothing. I did to get my blood sugar low. Nothing. And you all remember I ran a 5K for my birthday last year, my 40th birthday.
I remember.
I was doing all of that. But after that 40th birthday 5K, things went down. Nothing I could do could get my blood sugar under like maybe 250 to 300. So then I just started eating only collard greens and air and water. I spent over a year asking for antibody testing and was constantly denied. In the end, my gynecologist did the testing, and I'm positive for 2 type 1 antibodies. And so I live with LADA after having been misdiagnosed for 8 long years. So I'm angry too. Wow. Frustrated too.
Sisters, soul food, and diabetes. You mentioned earlier, Phyllis, about how they just assumed that you knew about diabetes. And I think that's so interesting that they didn't just ask you what you knew when you did not know. Because I do feel like as a person with type 1 who was treated as type 1, I am asked those questions now. I'm asked about like, where are my knowledge gaps? Whereas like with type 2, I'm not even like, there's no initiative taken to ask me like, where am I when it comes to knowing about nutrition or medication or whatnot. Like no one really gives you that. No one takes initiative to give you that education when you have type 2.
Like few weeks when I told people finally that I was misdiagnosed, like I know Felissa and Tiara, I think you two were the first people I ever told. And I loved your reactions because it was not like a reaction of pity. It was like, you're going to be okay, dude. Like, you're going to be fine. Yep. But when I would tell other people about it, they would be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you had a type 2 diagnosis. And I was like, what? What?
Oh my God.
Like, that's Mila. Not a reaction.
When I told my dad, I was misdiagnosed, and like I know he didn't mean this in that way, but he was like, "Oh, good, you're not type 2," and I was like, "Dad, no, that's not the right reaction. Like, I thank you because I know you mean well, but even if I had type 2, that's also okay. Yeah. But I just had the right diagnosis, so I don't die one day from high blood sugar." And he was like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." I was like, "Yes, don't. If someone told you that they were misdiagnosed, don't be like, whew, relief, because type 2 is the bad diabetes, Yeah. And it's just say that be relieved because you can be treated the right way."
Yeah, and it confirms like your fears about the beliefs that people had about you. Like people did think, oh, she just was lazy and like she did this to herself, when they give you that reaction of like, oh my God, I'm so glad you don't have type 2 anymore. And it's like, that feeling is like, damn, like, well, I guess like in your eyes, like I was lesser than because I had a different label, and not that it was any more or any less my fault that I had whatever type of diabetes I had, but like, this is what you thought of me this entire time. And that part has been really hard for me, is like revealing that to people who congratulate me, and I'm like, there's no reason to congratulate me, like it sucks.
Yeah. When this LADA diagnosis came, I couldn't leave the doctor's office. I had to be escorted to the nutrition, the diabetes educator.
Wow.
Literally.
They handed you with kid gloves.
Do you hear me what I say, honey? The red carpet was rolled out. Ta-da! Wow. We have to escort you, madame, over here to the services available for people with type 1. You see what I'm saying? I had been to this place 6 years. I never got that treatment. Didn't even know it existed. Literally got up from the desk and said, you cannot leave this office without seeing the diabetes educator. And I'm going to walk you over there to her to make sure that I don't leave without getting the proper education. Now, it's interesting, when I was diagnosed with type 2, I was discharged from the hospital with insulin, with no needles, a glucometer,
with no strips. So when I got home and opened up my hospital bag, I didn't even know what to do. I was like, well, in the hospital, they put a thing on top of the pen. Where is that? Oh, those are needles. You got to go buy them. Okay, well, this is the glucometer. Where's the thing that goes in the strips? You got to go buy them. So I was so ill-equipped. But the treatment between type 1 and type 2, it is different. Matter of fact, I recorded a video this weekend that I'll be putting up next week where I'm talking about how people perceive me differently when I say I have type 1 and type 2.
It really is just a difference of, how it's caused. And we know that with type 2, it's a myriad of things. It's not one thing, which is another common question that people always have when they have type 2, which is, why did I get it? And it's like, who knows?
Yeah.
And we need more people to be okay with just knowing the diagnosis. But also, I think it would be good if patients can just, continue to advocate for themselves and continue to find a doctor who's willing to give them like a GAS-65 test.
Yeah.
I really think that should be standard of care. Like when you diagnose someone with type 2, you should also be ruling out type 1 as well, just because you don't want someone to go through that honeymoon period and then they go into DKA like that.
And they live misdiagnosed 8 years.
Yeah,
someone told me they were
so
14
dangerous.
years. That's horrible. I have to say, if there is a time when I was glad that my family didn't know much about diabetes, it was when my diagnosis changed, because I was like, I'm not type 2, I'm type 1. And they were like, okay, you still have diabetes, right? And I was like, yeah, man. Like, okay. You like, they were just like, oh, okay, but you still got diabetes, right? So when I begin to share with them some of the experiences I have, they're like, what? I don't understand. Like, a company reaches out to you because they want to work with you to bring awareness about type 2. And then when you say you have LADA, all of a sudden they drop you. They don't respond to any emails after that, or they tell you thanks, but no thanks. They're like, but isn't it all diabetes? Like,
I mean, and talk about hustling backwards, right? Because if anything, you want people with type 2 to question their diagnosis and make them be like, hey, let me just see if my diagnosis was correct.
Until I met the two of you and like Charisse, and now like these like countless people I posted the other day about my misdiagnosis, and I had literally 50 to 60 comments that were like, I actually went through the same exact thing, and I never knew that my doctor could be wrong. I thought my doctor is my doctor. They went to medical school. They treat diabetes. They know what's up. And I never ever, until I got to a point where I was trying to change things for the better and they would not change and they would not budge, that I questioned it myself. But otherwise, like the 4 years that I was living with a type 2 diagnosis, I didn't really, it was everybody else around me who questioned my experience. And it was me who said, like, I can't talk to my doctor like that. I can't ask my doctor and tell them that they're wrong. Like, there's no way. And I think it's so important for people to know that like they can be wrong, and it happens way more often than you think it does. And it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to like be skeptical. And I think especially like as a woman of color, we are not given the luxury of belief when it comes to the medical system.
Right.
Like,
yes.
now you can say that again. Say that again. But I also have this thing where I feel like a Black woman with a needle, right? Like my mere Blackness and having a needle and giving myself injections in public, like I don't want to experience that more than I have. I've even had a situation where I stayed with a friend for 2 days and they were gone. So someone else stayed like another weekend and someone else another weekend. But I was immediately asked when they saw a syringe in their house if it was mine.
mm-hmm.
And I don't do anything, with this. So I ended up having to show the friend, this is what a diabetes needle looks like when it's on a pen, and not this one that you just showed me, wondering if it's mine.
Right.
So I'm just very aware that I'm
right.
a Black woman
and I don't do syringe vials. You know, people do that. I tell all of my medical physicians I need an insulin pen. I'm not doing vials. Now on an insulin pump, it's a little bit different, but I do feel better when I pull out my, you know, very brightly colored insulin pump and I'm giving myself insulin versus a needle. And then, you know, it's a different experience.
And
for me.
It is. It makes
it really is.
You have to like adjust differently, even like when I travel. So I have insulin pens right now. I never throw my pen needles away. I mean, you shouldn't anyway. You should use a sharps container, but I keep all of my trash, like all of my diabetes trash with me. And I wait till I get home to like sort everything out and throw it away. And my husband's like, well, why do you do that? You could just like get rid of it or bring like a mini sharps container with you and throw it away. And I'm like, because I don't want to be questioned with my name on the hotel room and somebody finds a little container of needles or I was doing something inappropriate, because that's the first question to me. Not, oh, you have diabetes, like you have to do this. It's like, oh, you like crack addict, or like, you know, it's like that's the immediate thought, not something else is going on or you're taking care of your health, like just like being approached in the restaurant. And like I posted actually that experience on TikTok, and the comments are so widely varied, because people with diabetes are like, no, I understand why you would inject, because you have to plan it with your meal time. Like I get like why you would do that at the table. That makes sense. And then people without diabetes are like, that's disgusting. You should never do something like that. People are afraid of needles. You need to get like your stuff together or go to the bathroom, the disgusting bathroom that like you really like change your child in, but like you want me to inject myself with insulin in a dirty toilet room? Like, not. And so it's like those are like the kinds of perceptions, Tiara, like talking about perceptions that I think people have about people with diabetes, is like, it's so easy for you to live with this, and the timing of everything that you have to do is like you're in control of it. And it's like, I'm not in control of when my food comes. When I order at a restaurant, I could wait 20 minutes, I could wait 40 minutes. I'm not in control of where I can inject and why. I'm not sometimes in control of like the timing of my medication, because I have take a few pills like right before I eat, and I wasn't planning to like go to dinner with friends tonight, or you know, like
it's a lot of mental math that you have to do in your head when it comes to like carb counting, or even just like you said, meal, just the timing of it all.
And then you add like, you know, race on top of that.
Yeah.
Where I work, like the neighborhood is very, it's a comfortable neighborhood. Like you can tell people who live there are comfortable, but it's also noticeably white. And as a Black person who sees like cops like driving up and down the main highway all the time, I had like this big black thing on my hip, walking around, and also I wear a lot of hoodies during cold weather. So I just did not feel comfortable wearing or taking out my pump if I felt like I was dropping too low, if I felt like I was about to, if I need to bolus or whatever, because I did not want my pump to be mistaken for a gun. And at first, I like, even like when I thought that, I'm telling you, like my instant reaction to that was, that's crazy. Like, why would I have to feel like I'm not doing anything wrong? But then I'm like, oh wait, hold up. I don't have to be doing anything wrong. I could really just be wrong place, wrong time. Cop drives by, girl in a hoodie, and depending on how my hair looks that day, it's either going to look really, really shrunken up or it's not. And someone could be like, this person is suspicious. I've never seen this type of person around here. And they're holding something black, and you know, sometimes they only ask questions first. They just shoot first. And that became a source of anxiety for me. So I was not going to walk around in the surrounding neighborhood. I was only going to walk along the stores and restaurants, because I'm like, it's public. And I think that's where like race and diabetes comes to play, because not only are you worried about, you know, just making sure that you're getting your right care when the timing is right, but like how it looks to other people.
There was no way, like this case that I have, they also have this in black. There was no way I was going to get this in black. And I'm now switching over to T-Slim, going through some insurance issues. I have
Control
a pump
IQ.
with control IQ. I can't wait. So currently in my possession, I have an insulin pump, but no supplies. But that's another story. It comes with a black case. There is no way I am going to keep my insulin pump in a black case. I have bought a bright purple case. I have bought a bright purple sticker for it.
Yep.
For the same reason, because I don't want to be anywhere seen pulling out my insulin pump, and then somebody's cop or somebody's daddy or somebody's Karen, whatever, thinks that I'm doing something. You know what I mean? Like I can't, and I feel like that's a black tax because it comes with a black case, but I'm literally spending money on a different case because it's a brighter color and I feel safer with that.
Right, girl. You know, I feel you on that. Tammy, has your doctor ever talked to you about like other diabetes technology?
Never. Not once. She was like, prick your finger. You know, it's frustrating to listen to this actually. Especially when I go in and I'm like, you know, I'm condescended to sometimes. Yeah. Or I'm like, I'm 48. I am not I'm not a child. Stop talking to me like this. Or stop saying weird things like you're overweight. Did you think I woke up and thought I wasn't? And it's frustrating because now I'm hearing you all say, oh, well, my endocrinologist offered this, or my primary care physician offered that. I have been offered none of those things. I don't know any of this stuff, and I just want to burst into tears right now. I'm so upset.
Yeah, don't burst into tears. But listen, let me tell you, I know what it's like to be a whole grown woman. When you 40, you're a whole grown woman. And nobody should be talking to you condescendingly.
Felissa, when did you first become aware that there were other things other than like pills and insulin? Like when did you know that pumps and CGMs were also marketed to people with type 2?
The Freestyle Libre had been available in the UAE when I was pregnant, and I never knew about it. I could have gotten it when I was pregnant. I was on insulin and I had a lot of hypos. And when I asked why they never said it, the response was because it's expensive. So there was a judgment about my financial situation made by my healthcare provider, and therefore I was never told about the possible access to something that would have made my pregnancy a lot better.
Right.
So I ended up finding out when the Freestyle Libre was available in the US. And then so many of the people that I follow in the DOCs, then they were like, oh, it's coming to America, blah, blah, blah. And so then I looked, and it turns out that it had been available in the UAE like 5 years prior to that. But that whole judgment where I wasn't giving access. Mila, you and I were had the privilege to have a conversation with the healthcare provider, virtual. And I remember when the question came up to him and it said, which is better, the once a day GLP-1 or the once weekly? And his immediate response was, I asked what kind of health insurance the person has. And that stuck with me because I thought to myself,
that's real.
What does that have to do with the medication though?
Right.
You know, and I say that because you're making judgments about a person's financial stance,
right,
prohibiting them from getting the medication.
For some physicians, like in Tammy, like yours might be a perfect example. She's a great doctor and she cares and she will make sure that you're taken care of. But some doctors and some healthcare providers just don't know the options.
They don't.
My doctor was like one really good example of that. Like she's amazing, my primary care doctor, but she had like the humility to be able to tell me, like, I have prescribed you Jardiance, we increased your insulin, you're on 1,000 milligrams of metformin, like, and you're exercising and we're going through like everything that you're writing down and we're not seeing progress. And I can't tell you why. So I'm going to send you to an expert who can tell you why. And you're going to come back and you're going to see me and we're going to keep working together and keep adjusting it. But I want somebody else on your care team who has a better depth of knowledge than I do to actually like help you
Yeah.
get to the place that you need to get. And that's how I found out about my misdiagnosis, because my doctor was like, I cannot help you anymore. I'm tapping out. We are going to see to somebody who is better. So I think that's also it too, is like, there's like a balance of the expectation that your doctor is going to kind of know what to do, but also you advocating for yourself as a patient, which I know that you do.
When were you aware that there were other things than pills and insulin to treat type 2?
It was honestly like when I started being active in the DOC, diabetes online community, and seeing somebody's CGM and seeing them post the screenshot of their chart. And I was like, hey, where do you get data like that? Like, I prick my finger twice a day and like, I don't have a chart like that. And they were like, oh, it's a CGM. And I was like, what's a CGM?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like seeing other people with it led me to ask more questions, which then led me to my doctor to say like, hey, did you know that this exists? And like, I'm techie and I like having my phone nearby, and this seems like something that help me.
Has it ever occurred to you if you might have been misdiagnosed?
It has. Honestly, I never thought about it before, because I thought there's either type 1 or type 2 and that's it. Type 1 is for kids, and type 2 is for old people. And that's it. That's what I knew about diabetes. I mean, now, of course, I know more, but it hadn't occurred to me until lately when I've been hearing stories like you guys have of being misdiagnosed.
As a person who was misdiagnosed for 8 long years, and across that time, I was given different medications, and some of them I should never have been on because they force your pancreas to excrete insulin. And that's not good for someone with type 1 who is trying to hold on, to what you have as long as you can have it.
Right.
I want you to know for a fact that you have type 2. Check your records and see if they tested you for antibodies, because you don't want them giving you all kind of medication, possibly causing you more harm. Now, I don't know it to be true. I just feel it to be true that if I was not given medication like that and being someone's guinea pig, I probably would have had a longer honeymoon phase.
Right.
So just check your records on your term and see if they have ever tested you for the type 1 antibodies.
Thank you very much for watching this episode of Sistas, Soul Food, and Diabetes. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share, and come back for more.